Hi there. I'm continuing my brief survey of my collection of 10 affirmations as I have attributed them to each of the Sephirot of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. I'm not an expert in Kabbalah by any means, but I do enjoy using the Tree of Life as a reference point, or 10 reference points, as it were. It's a kind of spiritual roadmap, if you will. And I suppose one day somebody's going to make a fantastic road movie based on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, which would be great. Anyway, I leave that up to somebody to do. I'm not a movie maker. So we come to the 10th Sephirot, Malkut, and the affirmation or injunction, I suppose, was an exclamation mark after in the word engage. And this is engage in the world. Malkut means the kingdom, and it refers to actual physical world. Malkut is a sephirot which hangs like a pendulum, it is said, off the tree of life. It's a sort of literally an appendage of the tree of life. So really the good stuff, as it were, the meat and potatoes of Kabbalah don't really start until you've left Malkut and gone at least to the level of Yesod, which is sort of be directly above where Malkut is. And there's three paths, one leading from Malkut to Hod on the left, another path leading to Yesod in the middle, and another path leading to the right-hand pillar, which is to Netzach. And it doesn't really matter. We're not looking at the paths at the moment, which is a good thing because I've sort of forgotten half of what I know about the 22 paths of the Tree of Life. I'd have to look it all up again. It doesn't really matter because we're looking at Malkut, the kingdom. We're looking at the most base and material form of the Tree of Life. In the tarot cards, it's all the 10, the four tens. We're looking at the world of form, the world as it is, as we perceive it, the world of matter. And from a Gnostic point of view, of course, from the classical Gnostic point of view, well, actually, I've got to be careful about saying classical Gnosticism. Somebody pointed out to me that that is actually a non-word because Gnosticism is a spectrum of beliefs and practices, norms and values, which goes right back to when Gnosticism sort of first began, if indeed one can say when Gnosticism first began even. So already, talk about duality, talk about dichotomy between spirit being the good and matter being the evil. Already in classical Gnosticism, there's a refinement of those categories. But let us say that a lot of Gnostics believed that spirit was good and above matter, and matter was below spirit, and matter is evil. So, from the point of view of a person sort of in the midst of Malkut, which is where we all are, there is a duality between spirit and matter, between good and evil, as we are taught it classically, I suppose, in the mainstream religions. We'll come on to that in a little bit. But so it's like I sort of envisaged like Tweedledum and Tweedledee, or I looked at spirit and matter, and I look at them as two, as a husband and wife who don't get on anymore. Maybe they did in the beginning, but they don't get on now. And they just don't see eye to eye over anything. I mean, even existence, like spirit says to matter, you don't exist, and matter says to spirit, you don't exist. You're a figment of my imagination. You're as a result of me eating too much cheese before I went to bed, and I had this crazy sort of psychedelic dream, and in which some kind of strange being told me there was such a thing as spirit. But I don't believe it. It's just neurons firing in a random way. So spirit definitely doesn't exist, and God doesn't exist, and there's no afterlife and all that palonkers. And spirit says to matter, well, you don't exist because you're just a sort of probability quantum probability algorithm, and you don't really exist at all. I suppose it all hinges on the word exist. What does the word exist actually mean, I suppose, really? Anyway, they don't see eye to eye. They don't even recognize each other's existence, let alone validity, let alone value. Matter is evil because matter is well, I've explained why matter is evil on this channel many times, and spirit is good. Spirit is also pertaining of the non-dual. So ultimately, spirit goes beyond itself, because if spirit, goodness, and matter, evil, pertain of duality, then spirit has a sort of trick up its sleeve, because it says, well, I can go beyond myself. I can go beyond duality to non-duality, whereas matter can't go beyond itself. It's just stuck with itself in the dualistic world. So sort of Yabu sucks to you. I can be one. I can be plus one, and you can't be plus one. So spirit is plus one. It goes beyond itself, and matter is just X. It's just as it is, and that's what you get. What you see is what you get, it can't go beyond itself. And in any case, matter and energy are just in this dynamic equilibrium, and energy is just going from one form to another in an endless cycle or circle or spiral. But the spiral ends up as a cycle. It ends up where it was before, and nothing is achieved. It doesn't. There's no liberation from the wheel. The wheel of matter and evil just goes round and round and round, fired or fueled, I suppose, by the interaction of the three alchemical forces or alchemical substances: sulfur, salt, and mercury. And the triangle the triangle kind of forms a sort of spinning wheel, and the wheel is a sort of spiral, but the spiral becomes just another wheel, and so it goes round and round, and nothing changes, but everything changes, if you see what I mean. So basically, matter it never gets anywhere ultimately. It just gets where it was before, whereas spirit goes into the infinite. And I suppose evil is this thing that never gets beyond itself, and spirit is that which goes beyond itself. And then that's a definition of good and evil right there. In any case, we have. The Zoroastrians believed that Malkut, the kingdom, is the battleground between good and evil, between Asher and Drug, between matter and spirit. And matter is moral, and matter is immoral, or amoral at least, and spirit is moral. So spirit is ethics, spirit is idealism, spirit is utopia, and matter degenerates utopia into dystopia, and utopian people go astray, and it's all, and matter, the spirits of matter, or the demiurge of matter, enjoys the futility of this material existence, and people trying to do better and become better people, when in fact they can't become better people. Everything is just what you see is what you get. So obviously, an affirmation like engage, that is, engage with the world, is going to come as a bit of a shock, because if you're a sort of die-hard Gnostic, you're really going to say, in response to the good and evil, spirit and matter, I renounce, repudiate, and reject matter, this world of matter, and I reject, repudiate, and renounce all action. So I become a renouncer. I disengage. Surely that's the logical thing to do, is to simply disengage from this world, and go into the forest, and literally just meditate all day, and hardly eat anything, and literally sort of fade away, I suppose, really. But merely use the body, merely use my time on this earth as a sort of alchemical apparatus by which I will transcend this earth. So insofar as I use this earth as the alchemical laboratory for refining myself through meditation and through spiritual exercises of one sort or another, other than that, I don't give a fig about matter, and I will gradually fade away in terms of material, in terms of my body, but my mind will penetrate the veil, and I will transcend all that I see around me, transcend my five senses, transcend my reactive consciousness, transcend all consciousness, and create a completely new paradigm of myself, a new facsimile, if you like, of myself, which is not a facsimile but my true self. And so you get this huge spiritual movement focused on Hinduism on the Indian subcontinent as to total renunciation of the world. And so, of course, we're heading, of course, to the Bhagavad Gita. We're heading to the core of Hinduism, really, because in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, Arjuna won't fight. He won't go to war against his cousins and his relatives. He wants to renounce the world instead. He's in the middle of the battlefield, about to set the world on fire, about to unleash hell, and he says to Krishna, "I can't do it. I can't go to war. I want to become a renouncer. Instead, I want to renounce all action. That's the only way out of this." But Krishna manages to persuade him on different levels that renunciation, instead of as an alternative to war, is not an alternative. It is in fact a great big cop out, really. And Krishna manages to persuade Arjuna that he has a duty to his Svadharma. And his Svadharma is to fight because he is of the fighting caste. He is a warrior, and a warrior. The essence of a warrior is to fight. Your essence is what you do in life, and what you do in life is determined by your caste, determined by society. So you've got to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. So if you are a warrior, you've got to go to war and do your duty. That's one thing, which is a Svadharmic kind of argument. The other thing is that Krishna assures him that if you surrender the fruits of all action to God, then everything that you do becomes de facto moral. This is how I understand it anyway, but I could be wrong on this. Don't quote me. That everything, that God takes care of the morality or immorality of every action. And as long as you surrender the fruits of your action, so you act, and all the consequences of your actions are basically surrendered to God, and God will then take care. He will then, I suppose, he will then clear up. Well, it won't be a mess because everything that you do will be the best of all possible worlds, because it will belong to God. So God will take responsibility for your actions, as it were, really, and the morality of God is really part of God understanding why you did things, and the reason why you did X, Y, Z, is what really matters, not the actual action itself. So in Arjuna's case, the reason why he goes to war is more important, really, than going to war. So even though people will die, lots and lots of people will die horribly and grotesquely, including his relatives who are on the other side of the battlefield. Nevertheless, it'll all be all right in the end, basically. And if it isn't all right, it's not the end, kind of thing. And all will be well, basically, at the end of time. And of course, and everything will balance in the end as well. Every action will balance with every reaction, and it will all sort of 2 = 0. It'll all become 0. So you've got action and reaction as 2, and then eventually it'll all just become 0 in the end. And that is surrendering the fruits of your action to God. God is this 0. God is this cancelling out of all polarity at the end. And not only that, but of course, if you accept that you are soul, then as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, soul can neither harm nor be harmed. So you can't, soul can't kill, and soul can't be killed. Soul can't burn, and soul can't be burnt, etc., etc. Because soul is beyond matter, in any case, and beyond the duality and dichotomy of matter, and so therefore, your soul, your soul basically is part of God, in any case, and all will be understood at the end of time, and the soul will then say, but that's why everything happened. So basically, you've got to go to war because you can't go against your duty to your caste on one hand, and you're not really killing anybody because they're soul on the other, and because basically everything is surrendered. All the fruits of your actions are surrendered to God on the third point. So therefore, Krishna says to Arjuna, don't worry about it, go to war, it's okay. And of course, this of course raises the complex issue of the justification of war, the just war, which is an issue which has been debated in Christendom for hundreds and hundreds of years, because Christianity was a pacifist church at the beginning, but then it decided that there was such a thing as a just war, and it could be fought, and you wouldn't be an evil person for going to war, or not necessarily, not ultimately anyway. Even though people die and people are injured and people suffer grotesquely and horribly at your hands, and you die in grotesque and horrible ways at other people's hands, in the end, it all balances out. Now, of course, this depends on who you're surrendering the fruits of your actions to. And of course, many Gnostics would say you're surrendering to the God of this world, of the demiurge. And in fact, this isn't true transcendence by any stretch of the imagination. And the true transcendence results, or the truth of it is that you must renounce as much as you possibly can. And going to war is not renunciation. It's not repudiation or rejection of matter. In fact, it's just the opposite. So you do wonder who this God is that Arjuna is surrendering the fruits of his actions to. And that becomes a sort of question mark, really, which Gnostics have an answer to, but which I won't answer. I'll leave that to you to answer, really. And I suppose, and yet we come back to this affirmation: engage with the world, engage in the world, be in the world. Even if you're not of the world, you're still in the world. Well, how is this possible? Well, even if you're an announcer, you're still in this world. Even if you're treating this world as an alchemical laboratory by which ultimately you would transcend this world. So I suppose it's engage plus let go. That's the psychology of it, really, is that you engage in the world, but you sort of have a twinkle in your eye. You sort of ultimately let it go. You wear the world loosely. So it really doesn't matter about consequences too much. But morality does matter. So you stick to a moral path, come what may, and your duty is to morality. Your duty is to love. Your duty is to uphold the principles of love and non-harm, basically. So love seems to be categorized with non-harm, and that's the moral perspective, and that's what you stick to. So if the world demands that you renounce love, then you renounce the world, basically. And if the world does not demand that you renounce love, then you engage with the world insofar as that is true, or as that is the case, you see. Now, the other way of looking at all this is you engage in the world. Talk about here your personal trajectory in life. You see, the thing about it is that Krishna says to Arjuna, you really should do your svadharma. You're a warrior, so you should do what warriors do, and that's fight. So, of course, Arjuna, as far as the caste system goes in Hinduism, the idea is that everybody knows what their trajectory is. If you know you belong to a certain caste, then you know what you should be doing, when you should be doing it, with whom you should be doing it, and you know what the fruits of your actions will be. They will be to support the caste system. But of course, with the end of the caste system, and with modernity, none of us actually know what our trajectory is supposed to be. People say, do your true will, but what is your true will? It's a question that begs the question. And none of us do know what our trajectory is. We all come from different social backgrounds. We all have a different trajectory. It seems to me that we're buffeted about by forces totally beyond our control. We're just sort of, we're loose on the ocean, and there's nobody at the tiller. We're just buffeted by the wind. It's sort of a bit like Tolstoy, in Tolstoy's idea that we're not in charge of our destiny at all. We're not captains of our soul at all. We're just, sites of intercepting social forces, and we're buffeted around from one thing to another, and we don't have a trajectory in this world. That's why our trajectory should be to transcend this world instead of engaging in it. And yet, of course, we do find ourselves in this world. So engage seems to be the logical answer to being in this world. And you engage plus you let go. And of course, let go is the affirmation that I've attributed to Keter, which is the crown, which is the pole opposite of Malkut. Keter is pure spirit. So if you combine engage plus let go, it seems to me that you're sort of surrendering the fruits of your actions basically to this world. You're saying, well, this world can have the fruits of my actions, good or bad, destructive, creative, or preserving. But my true trajectory is to transcend this world. And insofar as that is true, or that is required, I will reject, renounce, and repudiate this world and seek a life of contemplation instead of total engagement. But if I do engage in the world, which I have to by definition because I'm in this world, then I will pretty soon let go of such engagement. And the first opportunity I will let go, and then my trajectory will be free to penetrate the veil and to start on its great trajectory into the infinite, the transcendent realm of the true God, rather than just going round and round, buffeted by forces of the demiurge for the rest of, not for eternity, but until matter implodes and becomes dead and cold and nothing. Which it will do. 2 equals 0, right? 2 travels towards 0. At the end of a certain period of time, matter will be dead. There will be no more energy. The second law of thermodynamics will no longer apply. And there won't be a dynamic flow of energy through the universe. It'll all be just flat-lined. There will not be any more sine wave, but just a flat line. And that will be it. But I will have transcended matter by that time. and I will go beyond this imploding matter which is coming to nothing. So basically, everything that I do in this world, I should recognize ultimately has no value, basically, other than as a means by which I might transcend the world. And it's got nothing to do with surrendering the fruits of my actions. It's got nothing to do with Svadharma. It's got nothing to do with even with the idea of soul, which can't be harmed or harm. My body can certainly harm other bodies and be harmed by other bodies. And insofar as matter is evil, this is the case. And insofar as spirit is good, it is not the case that I harm with my soul, or I am harmed by other souls. Like that is certainly true. But in this world, it's also true that bodies harm and are harmed, and which they must do, because even if you accept the idea of trajectory, people are going to clash. Planets are going to fall into each other. They're going to hit each other from time to time, and so conflict and war will be inevitable. And as it says in the Mahabharata, of course, if you love other people's children less than your own children, there will be war, which is certainly true, because you're going to put your family first before the family of anybody else, and therefore inevitably there will be conflict between the two families, right? So I actually, in the end, I actually reject Krishna's arguments for Arjuna. I think Arjuna should have stayed in the forest, actually, and never emerged from the forest. And he shouldn't not be on that battlefield in the first place. Of course, then Krishna will reply, since he is on the battlefield, he can't renounce the world then. He can but fight. And I suppose that's true. We're like rail cars, aren't we? And a rail car pushes you from behind, and the other rail car in front of you pulls you. You're pushed and you're pulled, and you find yourself in a certain situation, and you must do something. You can't do nothing, because to do nothing is actually worse than doing something. We find ourselves on this rail track, and we can but move forward. And we are pushed and pulled, right? We shouldn't be on the rail track to begin with. We should be on some quiet siding somewhere, but we're not. We find ourselves in the midst of the kingdom, and we can but act. But my reply to that is that yes, sure, we have to act because we're in the world of action, but our actions should always be directed towards transcendence. And the transcendent realm, rather than we never. You render unto Caesar the very minimum. That's my argument. The very minimum, and your whole being, your whole maximum sort of focus is on upholding the good, which is not to harm anything or not, and even the expense of your own self. And that would then be to move forward towards the infinite. So this is, some people may find this a bit of an odd homily on Malkut and the Affirmation Engage. It seems to me, well, a lot of people will say you really are sitting on the fence over this one. You really are, like Arjuna, sitting in the middle of the battlefield saying, I don't want to fight. But you've got to fight, mate. You're there. What else can you do? There are reasons why you're on the battlefield. That it's not all your fault. It's not your fault. It's a clash of different things coming together to create the situation for war, and you're a warrior, so get on with it. So tuck the world under your arm and leave for school. The child won't go to school. Pick up the child and take it to school. Engage, manage. Be responsible for your actions. Act. You're saying that on one hand, and then you're saying to us, oh no, you should renounce and reject and repudiate the world, and you should lead the contemplative light. You should not be on the battlefield in the first place. You should avoid battlefields. You should avoid being a warrior. Well, in that sense, you should be a warrior in the sense of Mahavira, who defined warriorship as a person that does not harm. So the true warrior doesn't harm anybody, even if they are harmed by other bodies. They don't retaliate. So and interesting, I started off my survey with looking at Gabura, which is the sphere of war, the 5th Sephirot on the Tree of Life. I'm now looking at the 10th Sephirot on the Tree of Life, which is 2 times 5. And I'm coming to the conclusion that war is not a good thing. War is not good, and renunciation and going into the forest is a good thing, because at the end of the day, spirit goes beyond matter. Spirit goes beyond the duality of spirit and matter, whereas matter does not go beyond itself. It just stays as it is. And matter is indeed destined for the fire, or destined for hell, and hell actually is a cold place. Hell is when there is no more molecular there's no more molecular vibration. All vibration ceases at the end of time, and matter has never gone beyond itself. Matter just ceases to be. Whereas if you choose a spiritual path, you will never cease to be, because your consciousness will join the trajectory of the infinite.